Welcome to 1 Million Cent, the podcast where we equip you to share Jesus.
Hey, 1 million cent, 1 million cent. Get untrained and equipped 100%.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the 1 Million Cent podcast. My name is Ryan Fontenot, and I'm joined today with my incredible co-host, Dillon Chase and Zeke Garcia. We are excited for another chance to see 1 million teens trained to share the gospel around the globe. So thanks for tuning in, and I guarantee you today you're going to be blessed by this episode.
Yeah, man, we thank you guys for tuning in or listening, and we have an amazing guest on the show today. Not only is he equipping students as a student pastor at TCAL, he's also an FCA ambassador for the DFW area. So, man, we're excited to have you on the show, Sly Stemley, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, Sly, welcome, man. Welcome to the podcast. Tell us a little bit about how things are going at TCAL and with FCA in your area.
Man, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be sitting aside some brothers in Christ, and grateful to be here. Things have been mind-blowing. It's probably the two words that I would use, maybe just combine them together. Is one, how is how I would describe that. What we are seeing is just things that are not normal. A lot of people are saying that I'm like a disruptor because we have an unorthodox way of how we are reaching students in Mansfield. And I'm blessed to be a pastor on staff at TCAL that our senior pastor supports my on-campus presence. You know, I'm on campuses, 2 to 3 campuses a day.
Oh,
and
wow.
I'm there sometimes hour or two, and that's not normal for a youth pastor, right? And it's cool because this past week I got a chance to sit with a student going through some mental health stuff, and sat there and was able to talk to him for 2 hours. I didn't have to worry about getting back to the office, right?
Yeah.
And my pastor's okay with that, right? He's not saying, hey, how many people are showing up from you being on campus? And then the other side of it is we're seeing our students that are in our ministry leading at FCA.
Yeah.
They're getting up and speaking in front of hundreds of students. And so this past week had an opportunity to just watch God move in a very tangible way, where an FCA huddle a couple years ago started with like 5 students, went from 5, and then yesterday they had close to 400.
Wow. Come on. Yeah. That's what that consistency relationship, man, does. And I know you are, man, you're incredible, at that. I've watched you as we kind of link arms on different things. Next week, we get to do a little tour together, man. I'm super stoked about that. And, as being both in the church and outside of the church on campuses, you kind of firsthand are seeing like some of the pressures that this generation is facing. I think when I was a youth pastor, I remember sometimes you'd get this phrase, well, it's just like it was when I was a teenager, to hear that from a parent. And I'm not sure parents say that anymore, but I guarantee it's not anything like it was. And so these pressures that kind of they're feeling, like how does this like stoke up the urgency of sharing the gospel? I know you're talking about kids coming to Christ and all those things. So how is those kind of pressures of today kind of amping and amplifying that urgency of the gospel?
Well, I think in this time, you're right. Parents are pulling back from saying that because it's in more households that students are struggling.
That's right.
It's sad when you go onto a campus and they had just shut down the campus because a student might have tried to kill himself.
Yeah.
Right. Or and it's a normal thing now, where years ago, if you were a youth pastor, that might have happened once in a 10-year span.
That's right. Yep. That's fair.
Now it's, depending on the zip code, it's probably once a week.
Wow.
I mean, you got students that are, I can say this because I'm not going to say school. You got students that are having sex in bathrooms weekly.
Wow.
They've had to take doors off of high school bathrooms because students are in there smoking weed. That wasn't like smoking weed like you would leave school to smoke weed. They go to school to smoke weed.
Wow. Wow.
And so you have a generation that, for those that have not conformed to the world, they see it and they're like, man, I can't even focus in class because I don't know if a fight's finna break out.
Yeah.
Because we've seen it, right?
Yeah.
In the town that I was in, I left the campus 30 minutes before the shooting happened at Timberview. Doing a Bible study. I had just walked out. I'm standing on a sidewalk with another youth pastor. And then I leave, get in my car, and students are texting me, hey, help.
Wow.
I'm like, what are you talking about?
Wow.
So I finally get to where I'm going, and somebody's like, hey, did you see the news? I was just on that hallway. So this is what they're dealing with.
Yeah.
And then you see an urgency and a desire like, hey, we need to save our school.
Yeah.
Because it is really dark. When students can't focus in the classroom because they don't know if there's going to be a shooting, they don't know if a girl's going to get raped, or they don't know if they don't know. They have no idea.
Right.
And so there's an urgency right now.
There's a different. They're not just worrying about passing a test. They're worrying about getting out alive sometimes.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
You have students that will. Again, I had this happen Tuesday. I get a call from a counselor. Hey, can you help us? Such and such just left. Trying to call, and we don't know where the student's at.
Yeah.
And so I've been blessed with relationships with different schools to where if there are situations where students are struggling, but it's not just one student in a school. We're talking across America. Like right now, we have a serious epidemic of anxiety, depression, fear, shame, blame. Like the students that went through COVID and got raped, boys and girls.
Yeah.
This is my life now. This is what I'm hearing. I'm walking with young men about getting molested during COVID.
Yeah.
Not just young girls. And so they're like, man, I need something positive because right now I'm struggling. You want me to pass the test? I can't even think about what happened to me
Yeah.
a year ago.
Wow.
Or 2 years ago when I was in my sleep. I was woke up.
Wow.
With that. And so the students are on fire. Like, hey, my friends need help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the temperature's just raised there. The urgency that you see students actually like, hey, they need hope, and we know where hope comes from.
Yeah.
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 The intensity is there, and students who, man, by the grace of God, I guess you're saying there's certain students who have just been spared from some of the craziness, who have Jesus, who have the Holy Spirit, and who see a need. And between, being a youth pastor and also like serving with FCA, and man, I've got to do so much stuff with FCA. I think it's amazing, like the door you have to get into the school through FCA. But what are some of the obstacles you see from those students who they know the gospel, they see the need, they see their friends hurting more than ever? What are some of the obstacles they have to overcome to be able to share their faith effectively?
Say rejection.
Like the fear of rejection.
Isolation. I think that there's yes, you have the boldness there, right? And we see the boldness out of Acts, Peter and John, but these students are, before they get to the boldness, there's the barrier of that burden of, man, if I am bold, do I put myself in a position where I will no longer be accepted? Right? Because I'll give you an example. We've had students go out and hand out invitations to FCA. But the thing that they struggle with is, as soon as I do this, are they now going to think I'm the Jesus freak?
Yeah.
Wow, just from an invitation.
Just from an invitation.
Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't even share the gospel in my testimony. It's just from that. Are they now? Am I going to be the weird kid? Because you got to think where social media is at.
Yeah.
Like, you could be handing out an invitation down the hallway and somebody's recording you.
Yeah.
And then now they've created a whole IG page about Jesus freaks. That's a thing. Like, if you go and you look at most schools, they'll put a school's name with a title behind it, and they'll put you on there, and you have no idea that you're on there.
Wow.
That's the space you're living in. So they're like, man, if I do this, like, how far is this going to travel with me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you got to think about like 20 years from now when you get a job and your employer looks it up and they have no idea. So you're a Jesus freak, but man, you're out there on the internet.
Yeah. I was thinking about that. I was talking to somebody about this the other day. When I was in high school, if you got made fun of or picked on or whatever it would be in high school, you went home and it was over. Yeah. It was over for the day. You go home. Now Now it's not. Now it may just escalate because of social media, because of technology, the internet, all of that, right? And so I think this just adds to the levels of anxiety and the fears. And like you were saying, hey, what are those obstacles? And that's a really great one to go, hey, man, that this obstacle of, man, I'm not going to be accepted. I might be ostracized. It's a real thing.
So some of those fears that you're talking about, man, they're very real fears that students have to think of now that maybe we didn't have to when we were in school. But what are some of the stories for you that have really stood out where kids have been able to push beyond that fear and say, you know what, I don't care what the consequence is of me doing this. Like, I want to be bold and unashamed of proclaiming my faith. And so what are some of those stories that really stand out to you where you've seen them press past that obstacle?
I would say, there's so many. I would say I'll give you a recent one that is pretty try not to get emotional thinking about it, but it's just having a student that struggled with feeling alone. It's that I have a lot of people around me, but people don't know how much I'm really struggling.
Yeah.
And there's this thing that I'm actually dealing with that nobody knows about. And I'm a leader. Everyone sees me as a leader. And we unpack some stuff. And after unpacking just what this individual is walking through, I challenged him. I said, you know what? What if what you went through was all to advance the gospel? And now this individual is moving in a way that is really challenging classmates in the school to step up.
Yeah.
And I think it's critical that we have these. I'm big on discipleship. I think there's an opportunity we have in the Western world to do better at discipleship. And when you have moments where you have students that are struggling with things that they haven't told anybody about, and they have this gift, I think we have to really be thoughtful of how we adopt and not adopt, but I would say equipped the saints by building them up so that they can go out and do the work for the church, right? And so have a student, we walk through this, and now this student is, when I say on fire, at anything that has the word Jesus or Bible in it. Every club at school. I ran into a pastor yesterday. He was like, yo, let me tell you about your guy. Yeah, he's connected to this Bible club, and he is on fire. And it really just took a few moments of sitting down and discipling him, and having some deep conversation to remind him that his identity is in Christ, not in his past.
Yeah.
And that all that he went through was to advance the gospel. That's what Paul talks about in Philippians.
Yeah.
He's like, man, I'm in chains, but thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
If you're going to sit here and put me in chains while you're listening, let me tell you about this pain.
Yeah.
And so it's been cool to be able to just see stories like that. That's like one of many, but that's like a more recent one that I'm just getting to sit back and watch that's been developing over the last year. And it's just so awesome just to see God moving and work through him.
I love those stories, where you can just pause and God gives you those moments of, hey, here's where I'm working, here's what I'm doing. Yeah. Hey, here's because in student ministry, just like all of life, there's a lot of moments that you're like, God, where are you? God, what are you doing? Is what I'm doing making a difference? And those, when you pause and you go, hey, I'm sure it was more than just this conversation I had with them, but that was part of it. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like preparing people to share the gospel, right? It's not just hey, okay, here's your trained, you're done. It's a process, right? And I know in your ministry at TCAL, like you guys are intentional about preparing your students to share the gospel. That's kind of how our partnership with TCAL began. So what tools have you seen effective? What processes have you guys kind of put in place to equip your students to not just know Jesus, but to be able to make Jesus known in their schools and on their football fields and in their teams and clubs and all those things?
Yeah, we partnered I don't remember when it was, but I had you come in and you kind of took our group through
Yeah.
the emojis.
Right.
And the year before that, FCA has the same emojis. And
Yeah.
so like every year it's a rhythm.
Yeah.
Like if you're doing any training, we have our students show up. I also take, when we have the FCA huddles,
Yeah.
FCA actually has some wristbands very similar to yours
Yep,
that has
yep.
that on there. So it's a regular. It's engrafted into the DNA. We will share the gospel.
Yeah.
It's not an option. So it's a yearly thing, and then I try to model it. So I have what I would call my inner circle of guys that I disciple, and they have more time and bandwidth to work with FCA students, the students at TCAL, and I try to model it for them. If we're going to pull up the Chick-fil-A, like I had one guy with me, Micah. You remember
Yeah,
Micah?
I know Micah, yeah.
So Micah's in the car. We're at Chick-fil-A. We're just talking. I'm just pouring into him. We pull up, and I had the wristband on, and I take a guy through it, and he's like, oh, well, thank you, but no thank you. And that was like, Micah was like, whoa.
Tell me you said it's my pleasure.
This is Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, I mean,
That's the most polite rejection.
Right.
Thanks. Thank you,
Right.
but no thank you.
Yeah.
But you
Polynesian sauce?
That's right. But you shared the gospel
Yeah,
with this
shared the
guy.
gospel with him, and Mike, and then we pulled off. And Michael was like, "I'm confused." Like, so tell me, what you're confused about. He's like, I didn't expect that to happen because he's been with me before, and like at restaurants,
Yeah.
And he's like, I really don't know what to say because I was expecting the person to be more receptive, and then you didn't get offended.
Yeah.
And I said, right. So Jesus shows this all the time.
Yeah.
He would present a question, but then sometimes he would just have to just let it sit there. I said, here's the reality. I shop at Chick-fil-A all the time. So he's going to see me a lot. And here's the cool part. Like I see this dude at least once a week now. 'Cause I go to at least once a week
That's
to pick
awesome.
up lunch for my daughter.
Right.
And I see him, and now he's memorized my name. Perfect.
Yes. Yes.
So what's next is I just continue to show up and to love on him, and then that will make him question. Maybe I do need to entertain.
this guy's still smiling at me
Right.
and kind to me. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then now all the other employees, there's like 3 other employees that have memorized my name. So there's a conversation going.
That's right.
And I told Mike, I said, it's not always about it happening right then.
That's good.
Yeah.
One plants, the other waters, God grows.
Yeah.
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 And so-
I read that somewhere.
Yeah.
That sounds good. If not, it should be.
Sound like it's in the book.
Sound like shit. I think that's in the book.
It's in the book. It's in the book. Apollos and Paul. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
And so, that's something I think modeling it for those that, because I can't be in the life of all 300, 400 students at all these different huddles, but I have to be able to model this in my inner circle.
That's exactly right.
And we make it a part of, it's just a part of our curriculum every semester. Every semester we're planning in how to share the gospel. So, yeah.
Intentionality.
Absolutely.
Planning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think,
modeling.
man, I know there's probably some crossover with your TCAL world and your FCA world, but then they're also two completely separate things too. But what I love about FCA is like even the Bible uses sports metaphors. You know what I mean? And I think there's always this easy in when you're talking about sports and to make those correlations with our faith. And one thing when it comes from someone taking ownership of their faith is they have to move from a passive, mindset,
Right.
a bystander, or you could say, getting out the stands and getting on the field, to be more active. And what are some ways, like whether it's FCA or TCAL, that you see students going from being passive to active? Could you speak to that?
Yeah, so I actually have a term I use for that is you have followers of Jesus and then you have fans of Jesus. You can even have fans that are on the field that really should be in the stands because they're lukewarm, right? Or they have put on the suit that was given to them by Saul that was never fit for a king. And so often, what kind of going back to the discipleship piece, I think we've kind of commercialized Christianity, right? We want the blessings, but we don't want the burden. Like I want the muscles, but I don't want the workout.
Been there before.
I mean, everybody wants those arms slide, but everybody ain't putting in the work.
He stretched like that.
Yeah.
When he said that.
Yeah, that's right. This is work, guys.
Stop it. But yeah, I think that there's a Pastor Paul made this comment. He said, "It's not where the pain leaves you, but it's where the pain leads you." And I think that so often in our journey, I give my life to Christ, I get baptized, and then I think, man, I arrived.
I'm done. Yeah.
I went to the gym, pulled in the parking lot, I bought the membership, now I'm fit. And wrong answer, right?
Yeah.
And this generation wants to see us be more consistent.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, if you're the head coach, why are you 300 pounds? Why can't you get out there and run with us? And so I found that as I model it, they will get behind it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right? So they're like, hey, if you're going to be a trainer, I need you to be in shape too.
That's right.
And I need you to be able to do the same exercise that you're asking me to do. And we're just at a point where they're fed up. Like our youth group, they real. They tell our, like, don't come in here acting like you want to be here and you don't want to be here. FCA, they've told the leadership team just said, hey, that guy was cool, but he was just buying time. He's just trying to get likes. Don't bring him back. They want authentic people that walk the walk and talk the talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so share the good news, but also live it out. Live sent.
But also
not stuck.
share the good news.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
That's
Right.
right.
That's good. Man, I love that. And I love that idea of consistency specifically with the leaders. Like in student ministry, what I tell my students often is, I'm never going to ask you to do something that I'm not willing to do first. Like if we can't do it, how can we expect them to follow?
Right.
And even with Christ, like everything that he calls us to, he modeled first, taught us through what he did, and then said, now you go do that. Yeah. And so obviously you being passionate about the gospel and sharing, you've seen the transformation in your life personally, but with the life of students, how do you see their lives begin to be transformed as they start being consistent and sharing their faith as well?
That's something I think is what keeps me encouraged, is being able to see that, because when we don't see, when you can't see yourself being transformed, it can, especially in ministry, it can create burnout, right? Like you can get to a point you're like, man, what are we doing here? But I believe that the beauty of seeing transformation through the youth group and even through FCA, there's the tangible, right? So when we talk about someone's walk, spiritual maturity, what we should see in that is over time, the growth should be things that we can see the fruit growing. So if I have a student, whether it's FCA or it's TCAL, and maybe they were in the youth group at ninth grade, and now it's 11th grade. I've had 2 years to be able to walk with them. Give you a prime example. There's a student, I got this from last night from one of our leaders. I've been in his life for 3 years now. And when I first got there, kind of quiet kid. Anywhere you find food, you'll find him. He reminds me of me. Like, hey, where are the snacks? But last night they were sharing a story saying, hey, there's a guy that he met that's on his basketball team that's going through something, doesn't know the kid's name, all right? Kid throws away some shoes. I can't remember the let's call them dunks. And then he throws away a second pair of shoes, and our student goes up and is like, yo, throw away your shoes, bro. He's like, man, you can have them. He's like, no. What's up? I'm gonna tell you, this was not the same kid 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. He would have been like, thank you.
Yeah.
For the shoes. You got any snacks? Like, that was him.
Yeah.
But he was telling his leader last night, he said, you know what? I'm going to get him to a church. Does not matter.
Yeah, that's right.
Does not matter. And I'm going to check on him every single day. I don't even know his name. Seeing that kind of transformation in a student, like the fact that he is now living sent and not stuck, that right there is what encourages me to keep going.
Yeah.
Because you can get a lot of negative feedback and a lot of hear all the noise of the terrible things that's going on that we're faced with.
Right.
But when you have that right there, I left encouraged last night. I was like, let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think those are the wins, and I would just say, as youth pastors, as evangelists, as pastors, as everyday believers, as parents, like, identify those little wins and celebrate in those,
Right.
And that's a massive thing, because I think so many times we move at a pace that, and I'm as guilty of this as anybody, we move at such a pace that we don't stop and celebrate.
Right.
And when we don't stop and celebrate, we're going to burn out. We're going to, we're going to get into depression. We're going to wonder if what we're doing really ever matters, And so we've got to stop and celebrate. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I hope that encourages even somebody watching or listening right now that maybe you're feeling like, I'm not making a difference, or, man, I'm wasting my time.
Right.
Stop and just identify some wins and celebrate in those wins and watch what God begins to do. And on that note, kind of as we land the plane today, what is a word of encouragement? Because this is one thing I love about just being with you, is I feel like there's this mutual encouragement, and everything's not rainbows and incredible.
Right.
And, I always say everything's not ice cream and Cocoa Puffs, right? It's just not. But there's always something that we can encourage one another with. And for our listeners, whether it be a parent or a youth pastor or even a student, like, what is one thing that you would maybe drop with them as an encouragement in their life right now, as it pertains to, hey, this generation, yes, there's a lot of struggle, a lot of pain, a lot of realness, but there's also a lot of students who are on fire sharing their faith. What's something you can encourage them with right now who are listening, as we shut this thing down, going, hey, don't lose hope, keep running the race, don't grow weary in doing good?
When it comes to students, don't assume.
Okay.
I think it's assumption can lead to dream assassination. Like, I did not know, stepping into FCA, that we would be, last year, ending the year, reaching 3,000 students. I did not know that we would have leadership teams of 7 to 10, and parents just like reaching out to me like, man, I did not, my kid is different. So don't assume the worst of students, right?
That's a good word.
Because that just leads, like, we will kill their dreams unintentionally.
Yes.
We will detour, delay, or decay their dreams because of our doubt.
Wow.
And if
I'm
we're
gonna
not-
make sure we drop that. That's a whole sermon right there. I don't know if that was a sermon,
it
but
did,
it is
bro.
now, dude. That was so good.
AI couldn't do that.
No, man, no.
Hard.
like we
Derail. Wait.
DK or detour
delay,
Delay.
decay, or detour dreams.
because of our
Because of
doubts.
doubt.
Our doubts.
So let's
Yeah.
can we? I don't know if we got time, but if we think
got-
about this with Joseph,
Yeah.
his brothers got upset,
Yeah.
right? And it's words become soundtracks from a music. Like we
Yeah.
think, and I have this saying, like the soundtracks that we have on repeat, on cue, or in the shuffle, can alter the direction of our life. And
That's
if it's
right.
doubt, the
Yeah.
thing that I dreamed of, oh man, I want to be an entrepreneur, but I keep hearing the soundtrack that I'll never be enough, or I'll never be as good as my uncle or my father. So now I'm playing that versus the dream that God gave me. Like Joseph. Joseph was
Yeah.
like, nah, bro. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, he was young, but he was like, no. Okay, I'm gonna tell you again.
Yeah.
And he didn't share after he was thrown in the pit, but the dream never went away.
No.
It was still inside of him. And then he started putting it to work. And when he
Yeah.
started putting it to work, even the people that he helped forgot about him.
That's right.
And we're seeing that in this generation where you have entrepreneurs. I know a student that I met last year that was making $4,000 a month. High school was an 11th grader. Let that student's parent tell them, oh, you're never going to amount to anything.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
What are we doing?
Yeah. That's right.
We're literally killing the next generation with words.
Yeah.
And the Bible tells us words have power.
Power, life, and death.
Life and death.
Yeah.
So what words are we putting on soundtrack for this next generation? Oh, you're just want to be influencers. Jesus was an influencer.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Oh, that's carpenter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, he's from that hood.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we need to be careful with just assuming the worst.
That's good.
Because every student that I've worked with that has sold drugs, that is known for being a ladies' man, maybe you name it, criminal activity or not, they're very intelligent. You show me a drug dealer.
Yeah. Yeah.
You show me somebody that knows economics. If we would just get to the heart and help them redirect that and ask them, man, what have you ever dreamed about? And I had a student like that, and he started a business selling shirts and all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, then he graduated. He was 2 years behind. Should have been a senior. And a couple of years ago, we helped him graduate. Why? Because we made sure that he didn't miscarry the dream that God had placed inside of him.
And it all has to do with the soundtracks we give in people's minds, and man, and not assuming the worst. And so I love that. That's a great word of encouragement, just as a reminder for all of us. And I hope this podcast will be that for some people too. And that's why I love having Dillon and Zeke here, because literally they're producing soundtracks that literally breathe in life into people. So thank you guys for what you're doing and being part of the team, man. I'm excited to see what God does in the future here. So
And Sly, man, thank you. You dropped some heavy stuff. It started off raw and real, but I'm encouraged because in everything you said, it still pointed back to, all hell may be breaking loose. Darkness may be growing, but we still have the solution, and the solution is Jesus. It's not cliche. It's not a catchphrase. The gospel is still the power of God unto salvation. And I even think me as like a speaker and a leader with what I'm doing with Rage, some of my verbiage and how I speak to students is going to change, man, just off of what you said, and not assuming the worst and not letting my doubt and things like that kill dreams, but to let the word of God redirect them and redefine, their dreams sometimes. So, man, just thank you so much for being on.
Awesome. Yeah, and to our listeners, man, let me just encourage you and remind you that God has uniquely gifted and equipped each and every one of you to be a light in your schools, your communities, your workplaces. So let's begin to take that step of faith and continue to live sent.
Yeah, and hey, that's it for today's episode. But before you click off, let me remind you, if you've been encouraged by this, hey, would you just share this with somebody? I always want to help us remember, one share, one click, one like could really put it in somebody's lap who God wants to use it in. You have no idea what a word that was shared today might be needed from someone who's just literally a share away. So thank you for tuning in. As always, thank you for supporting what we're doing. And don't forget this, today is a great day to tell someone about Jesus.